All right, you bunch of yahoos, strap yourselves in for another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity.
In other words, shut up, sit up, and pay attention.
Dan Severn is Karl Arbogast. He's a Green Beret from the U.S. Army. How long you doing it? 20 years?
25 years in the
Okay.
military, 20 plus in soft operations. Spent time in the Australian SAS. Worked for a couple other units out there and had some pretty unique experience, pretty unique career. Very fortunate.
Well, just the fact that you're a Green Beret, I mean, that speaks volumes about you and your character, because very few people get to the status of becoming a Green Beret. So I
Yeah.
commend you for that, and again, appreciate your service for our country. And there's a lot of things that people just don't know that you guys do. That it just goes unreported, but you do your job nevertheless. You know,
Appreciate it.
what I call America's unsung heroes in a lot of different ways.
Like,
It's the shit. It's the shit that the normal people don't want to do.
Mm.
You guys do.
or
Fine.
want to do but aren't capable of doing.
Yeah.
So you weren't tough enough to be at Delta Force, huh?
I had a different path with some other people.
Yeah. So is there anything above Delta Force?
Well, you've got there's a couple other organizations out there that kind of fall in line with them, right? So the way they
Okay, do tell.
the way
Don't make us guess it there,
well,
shit.
the way they rate and stack them, right? So you got your tier one units. So there's about four other units out there that are you would say is equivalent along them, right? So and then you have your foreign counterparts, like I said, like the SAS in
Right.
Australia, the SAS in England, but in the US, there's about four more that are out there that fall in line but have specific jobs and tasks, right? So you like even like SEALs, you guys talk to SEAls all the time.
Right.
Yeah, you got SEALs, then you got SEAL Team 6, and they're
Right.
just different,
But
different
but
levels.
is there anybody above, 6 and Delta Force?
That's those are pretty much it. There's some handpicked things that happen out there in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do they use, one from 6, one from Delta, and put them together, or do
they
they
can.
not
Yeah, they can. They
communicate?
can. They can be
Yeah.
selected. Like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all very unique. It's one of those things where there's jobs. The outcome at the end of the day is you get to watch, the news and go, oh, I had a little something to do with that. Yeah, so it's pretty rewarding.
Cool.
It's changed a lot too in the last, you know, shooting the time that I got out. I retired in 2011, but I was teaching as an instructor for special forces for 5 years after that. Um, but it has evolved quite a bit to where it's just ran and managed a little different. And then of course there's a couple presidents out there in the recent years who put everything out there in the media that was never out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So much for security, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, Carl, quick question I have this, but what intrigued you about military? I mean, and through, uh, did you look into this when you're like maybe even a senior in high school or something like that? Something intrigued you about military life, or
Um, honestly, Dan, my father was in the military. He was in the Philippines in World War II. Had a grandfather that was in World War One, and then throughout our history, I've got family members that were in the Revolutionary War, so it kind of seemed like it's in the blood. My uncle was a Green Beret in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Um,
Mine was
but
too.
yeah, so it was very, very cool to be around those people, hear those conversations. Originally, I was pushing, I was going to Marshall University there in West Virginia, looking to do other things, go another route. And to be honest with you, like the lifestyle at college was a little out of control for me. I like structure. So,
Yeah.
and the true short story of it was I wanted to be in the Air Force as a pararescue guy, but the Air Force recruiter kept missing the appointments and not showing up. And then the Army guy said, "You ever thought about joining the Army, be an airborne ranger and jump out of airplanes?" And it's kind of like the rest was kind of history. I ended up doing some different stuff and some LRC units, long range surveillance units, with nothing but Ranger Regiment guys. And so it just took me a different path. But yeah, originally it was like school was going good, GPA was great, but like coming back to your room and your roommate is like flipped the beds and drunk and people passed out everywhere. I was like, I need a little more structure. So I got to the Army and found out it was just the same.
yeah. Well, again, that's what something that Don and I we've talked about on numerous occasions, that a lot of high school graduates, they really don't know what they want to do in life. Um, they don't really have any kind of life experiences. They have no real work experiences, and yet there is a couple high school advisors that are all telling all of these graduating seniors, you got to go to college. And to me, That is the worst thing that they could be doing, especially when you look at what the cost of college is. And most people who did go to college, did they ever graduate? Did they ever use their degree? Um, Whereas, I mean, to me, it's like going, I think for at least a couple years, just go out and get into the workplace and realize I hate my job because I hate my boss. And then, when you do finally go to college, you're going to apply yourself. I still remember my freshman year at Arizona State. The first couple of days of registration, I'm still sitting in Istanbul, Turkey. Because I'm on a tour still for wrestling and stuff like that. And I fly back home. I'm home for less than 24 hours just to unpack one bag, repack the next bag, and then head up to Arizona. All I know is that by the time I finally came to, as I'm waking up in the apartment where I'm going to be staying with my older brother and stuff like that, there's blaring music. I walk outside in this apartment complex that I'm starting to see for the first time because there's a blurry vision from the night before. I'm walking out there and it's a 3-story high apartment complex and drunken debauchery at its finest. There's a live band going, drunken debauchery, and guys that are again drunken debauchery. They're jumping off the second and third tier, making certain that they hit that deep into that pool. I'm thinking people could have died easily that day, but it's just all due to you know no parental supervision
Yeah,
and
alcohol.
kids gone wild. Again, that kids gone wild segment was taking place way way before, but that was because mom and dad are no longer there, and you got these 18-year-olds because drinking age was 18
Yeah.
at that
Yep.
time.
Yep.
That's where you have to we have to keep reminding people that okay, times have changed and the drinking age and stuff like that have
Well, it
changed
was
as
right
well.
after Prohibition, so they had to lower the age,
But yeah, that's I have to watch for Don. No, he's always trying to sharpshoot me here, left and right here. It's a little one-liners there. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right, though. I mean, my last position that when I retired, I was working as a senior advisor for the RTC department in Appalachian State, right, in Boone, North Carolina, and so those students that came in, again, you're right. There was like not a lot of adult supervision, so things that they were doing. They wanted to be officers. And so I kind of looked at it from a standpoint of like, then you should be better than what you are right now, which means I can't, you shouldn't be out performing acts of jackassery,
yeah.
right? Where I'm going down to the police station and picking you up when you want to lead soldiers into combat. So, like,
That's why he eliminated me.
so they literally, like, the minimum requirement normally for that is 3 days, right, of PT, physical training for these guys, right? I'm like, no, I pay you. You get a scholarship. And the colonel supported me 100%. And it was like, you get paid your own scholarship. So you're going to work out like I do because I'm in the Army and you want to lead people like me in the Army. So we're working out 5 days a week. And so at first, your seniors kind of kicked back and thought they'd have like a little coup until I talked to the little old lady in tennis shoes and took some of their money, right? And then they were like, "Oh crap, he's serious. Maybe I should show up today." And but then they started stepping it up and performing, and it helped. Our school went from like in a brigade of 41 schools, they went from third from the bottom to number one in DOD in the whole system at one point. We had the highest PT scores in the country. And it was like, yeah, you're going to work out. You're going to do hard things. You're going to do difficult things. And it worked out. A lot of my students went on to become Green Berets. I got a couple guys that are over doing stuff with the other organizations out there. And a lot of them in PSYOP, civil affairs. So it worked out. And there for a while, though, they hated me. And then years later, I was getting letters like, oh my God, thank you so much.
Right.
Well, yeah, no, in the beginning, it would be kind of more of a hateful type of situation before, but then you realize, oh my God, how much that really helped me along the way. So
Yeah.
oh, trust me, from a coaching perspective, I've worn those same shoes where people aren't too happy because you're yelling at them, getting them out of bed in the morning, stuff like that, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll let you sleep then. See where that gets you.
Yep. Yep. And I was the same way on the team too, though. So like as a team sergeant, it was like, okay, you're grown men. We got training in the morning. I don't care how hard you party at night.
Right.
Tomorrow morning, when it's time to go, you're getting up, you're going to go. And I had a buddy of mine, I won't say his name, but great guy, great guy. I got nothing but love for this guy. And it's time to get up in the morning. We were in Thailand, and I get up 5 o'clock, and we're on the same room. But I'm like, my job is not to wake you up. I'm not your alarm clock. So I get up, I dress, I go out. A couple of the guys show up. It was like when I first showed up to that particular team. went out, did a run. We get back. They're waking up. They're wiping the sleep out of their eye. And they're like, oh, are we getting ready to go? I'm like, go. We're done. It's over. And they're like, well, why didn't you wake me up? Because you're a grown ass man. You're a Green Beret. Get the hell out of bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I hated Bobby Douglas when, he was the head coach. I hated him when we were there when I was working for him. And but now, I love the guy. I think he's great and miss him. And I still hate Dan though.
It's a burden that I bear.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think
Keeps me awake at night. Yeah, right.
right. You're
Ruins his appetite, as you can see.
Yeah. Definitely different though. Like you're totally right, Dan, as far as like these advisors trying to tell these kids like, oh, you failed your first test in college. So you know what, maybe you shouldn't go pre-med. Maybe you should do social work. Yeah, there's a lot of money in that. You're gonna do well. Like no. So it's just, the people that coach them along the way, I think is a huge impact. I also work as like the strength conditioning coach here for the women's basketball team. Yeah. And those girls worked their butts off. I've got some great stories on those guys, but those girls worked their butt off and they ended up doing, very well. And the guys came out a couple of times. The coach asked them to come out and train with us. They quit. They were like, no, this is too much. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And the women won, 3 conference championships and a national championship and a bunch of, records along the way. So yep.
Yeah, when we get when you ignite that spark in just a couple of them, it helps. It becomes contagious
Yep.
to others. So they don't want to be left out. They want to be part of that group, that part of that team, and
Yeah,
that's
the real
where
the real competitors. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause
yeah,
everybody in college athletes a competitor.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you find out who's really about winning the competition.
Yeah.
It's like the UFC. We always talk to somebody. Oh, I could have done that, but I was working this. I was doing this. No. If you're a competitor, you'd have had your fucking name signed on
Yeah,
it.
you find a fucking way to make it work, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
And the thing is, you look at it, you go, you either want to be here, or you don't, right? You got to put the work in or you don't. So it's the
Right.
same thing in special ops. The guys that are there want to be there and they put the work in. Um, there's a thing I tell the guys all the time when they come through the courses and training, and even the guys I work with now, because I still work with the Army now, training guys in Fort Campbell. And it's like, look, anybody could quit. Quitting's the easiest thing you'll ever do in your life.
Right.
So if you want to make your mark, you got to put the effort in. You got to stick around, right?
Yeah, and quitting's contagious too.
100% contagious. Yeah, 100%.
Did you ever have that moment where you're like, man, I can't do this? Or what was the hardest part for you for training camp?
No, to quote a politician out there, I'll say I grew up a poor, guy, middle class.
God damn, you sound like Harris.
But I did.
I heard this shit. I've heard this shit for the last 6 months.
Oh yeah, Carl, you're not gonna get no sympathy from that guy sitting across from the table from here right now.
But no, I definitely there's for me personally, no, I never never crossed my mind with things like that, right? Because I always looked at it like, if I'm here, other people went before me, so I should have the ability to do it. So if I physically can't do it, that's one thing. But to mentally break down or quit,
Right.
I'm like, well, then that's on me, and that's something you own the rest of your life, kind of thing. So I was like, no, I'm here. And then, I'd always, I grew up, like I said, with a whole lot of nothing. And so, like, from where I live to go to the, catch the activity bus to play football or basketball or anything, it was a 3-mile walk. My dad wasn't driving me. So it was 3 miles out, do practice, and then walk back 3 miles home.
Uphill both ways in the snow. Yeah.
Both ways in the snow there,
That's
in West
All uphill too.
all uphill. Yeah.
Well, did you have brothers or sisters growing up, or
Yeah, I got a sister that's my younger sister and a younger brother. He was
okay, all right. So then you being the firstborn, then yeah, I was gonna say everything. Yeah,
Yeah, so it just became kind of normal, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't mind it all. And looking back, I really think that prepared me for a lot because it wasn't all that wasn't easy. And so when I got in the military, when you had to do selection for these other events, it was like, all right, well, yeah, this is miserable, but it's not going to kill me. So I'll be all right. Just hang in there. But you talk about it being contagious. In Ranger School, in Florida phase, I had 2 guys on. You only get like one night in the barracks, right? Like one night that you get like a little bit of sleep. And I had a first sergeant there who knew me from a prior unit, right? And he was just an ass, right? Jenkins. All right. So, but this
that's
guy,
that's my mother's maiden name, Jenkins. Jenkins.
yeah, he was South Carolina, very, very country guy. But he showed, I'm like, racked out. You have guys on guard duty at the arms room, and this, talk about people like just quitting in groups, right? So I'm laying there getting my couple hours of sleep, and I hear that voice, like, "Hey, Ranger, what you gonna do? How you doing? You sleeping?" I'm like, "Roger, First Sergeant." He goes, "Come here with me, take a walk." And I go around the corner, and you go to where the guards are supposed to be. They're gone, and they left a note.
Oh my God.
Because they convinced each other like, this is too hard. I don't need to do this. So they quit. So everyone had to wake up. No one got any sleep that night, and we were back outside. So yeah, it was just interesting. But they did. When they quit in groups, right?
Right.
It's easier to tell the people around you, we're better than this. We don't need it. This is too hard.
Yeah. Talk each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
My grandfather was in Europe and WW2, and then after the Kraut surrendered, they rewarded him by sending him to Asia, and then, like I said, my dad was air commando. His brother was a Marine in Korea, and then Green Beret in Nam, and they see each other in the Pentagon every once in a while.
That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
And I dropped the ball.
Oh.
My 40th birthday, my dad puts his arm around my shoulders. They raised the enlistment age to 40, don't you? I'm thinking, oh, my back was fucked up. And I was like, oh God, Dad, I wish I could,
Yeah.
I didn't tell him that, but
Yeah. Yep.
my back is everything I do to stand up,
Oh, it takes a toll on you. I mean, like what you guys did for your careers. I mean, that takes a toll on your body. People don't realize that there's no easy day in that.
I'm like,
No,
we agree we got hurt more in pro wrestling than we did in the fight game.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
a lot of that just boils down to being in the ring with people that do not continue to train and perform. So it's when you just rely upon your skill set and you're not always honing your skills will start to digress. So there's even certain things that I would never have done in my latter years of my professional career, just because I know that okay, I'm not as strong as I once was. Okay, and I should not. I'm not going to risk the other person's health and well-being. Yet, a lot of professional wrestlers, all they care about is as long as they get their famous moves in, and without thinking about the safety and precaution of the other person. So it's an industry that I know Don and we tend to pull the curtain back and reveal the maestro that's pulling all the strings there just a little bit because it's a tough industry. It's a very political industry because why should you be pushed to the top and why not me versus you? So it is very selfish type of an industry, and you can always make certain that you rise to the top by oops, sorry, wasn't there to buffer that blow there for you, Carl?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And, I assume that the same thing for you guys was your training that, it would be tough too to watch that, for you to know that you're performing extremely well, but then watch the script play out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think, I don't know how, wired in now you guys are with the things that are going on, say in the UFC, but just, you can see a little bit of that working in the background, it seems like, and that's unfortunate, but, where certain guys just never get that opportunity to get that shot, whereas other guys get that rubber match, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, you got guys working their ass off, like give them the shot.
Well, the thing is, it's like, I tried doing the Hollywood thing, and it's clusterfuck. But the thing is, I lived with a couple guys over there, and one guy, David LaBrava, he says, you can't wait around for the work here. You got to make your own work, And so he wrote Sons of Anarchy and things like that, is based on him, and that's it. You gotta make your own way.
Yeah. 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 That's one of the lines we use is like, if you're sitting around and you're watching other people work, you're probably screwing it up. So go find work.
Right.
So even on the team, like when you have those moments where everything's kind of calmed down, the chaos is kind of went around. If you got time, you're looking around like, oh, this is okay. then you're like, well, wait a minute, I should be doing something. For God's sake, something, security, something, right?
Yeah. Not me, I'm lazy. I'm never guilty about watching other people work.
Yeah.
I got another question for you. You were talking about people quitting in teams,
Yeah.
right? So what about like team dynamics? Like how important is it teamwork in special force and operations? Like, can you maybe share an example of how you and a team got together to overcome a challenge?
Yeah, I mean it's huge. I mean, because that's the premise for like all your soft community, is that team cohesion. So all it takes is one guy to be out of sync and things don't go well, right? Like I've had some great guys that were great individually, but weren't great team players or weren't great on that team, right? Maybe suited for another team, but not that team.
Right.
And it's huge, because then you trust that guy, you're relying on him, to have your back constantly. So everyone has to be all in, everybody, which means that they got to train hard. But a lot of that goes on who's steering the boat, So like I said, I was kind of hard on some guys, and it was like, no, this is to make sure you get home at the end of the day. This is make sure not just you, but that he gets home because you were prepared to help him, kind of thing. But it plays a huge part. Like from the moment they start doing selection, in the Q course, qualification course, they go into, it's all team, individual stuff, but it goes straight into team dynamics where you're working with these guys. And that includes the officers, so that on the officer side of the house, it's not, they're not nested and protected. So they come in, they're part of that team, and you either fit in or you don't. The one thing you'll find in the military is that a lot of guys that'll say, oh yeah, the quote is, yeah, they, had an instructor or, something in the course. Well, they fucked me. Right. No one's ever failed a school in the military.
Right.
I'll tell you now, they all got fucked. Right.
Yeah.
But then you go, wait a minute, I got to packet this thick on you. No, you didn't. That's not what happened. Right. But they learned early on, you've got to be part of that team dynamic, even on the officer side for us a lot. And they do. The guys I worked with have been some great guys. I worked with some like guys who are just complete legends in the community, just amazing people. But they put the work in, but all it takes is that one guy that doesn't want to put the work in, and it just throws that extra load on everybody else.
Weak link in the chain. Yeah.
Yep. So, but usually the guys are there, they want to be there. Most of your special ops communities, when guys get into it, they don't leave. For the most part, they don't leave. Soldiers today, a lot of them, do 3-4 years, get some college, buy an Xbox, get a mattress, you get some sort of mattress for their house, and they bounce, right?
Wow.
Whereas, the guys that go soft typically stick around for the long haul. So it's a little different now, but they're still doing it for the long time.
So is it people and things changed in the military in the last 25 years like they have everywhere else in the world?
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I get ready to jump in there to simply say that in the last maybe 8 years or less, how much has military changed? And um, there used to be different no tell no I'm trying to think how the slogan went there, but
don't ask, don't tell.
yeah, don't ask, don't tell. But it's kind of going. But now that people are they asking that you have their correct pronouns for them?
Really?
It's I mean, we live in a strange world where it's like going, and Don and I are pretty blunt about that. I mean, there's always been people that were gay. I mean, I'll just call it again. Don't care that preferred same sex stuff. But that to me, they're going. And you had some great comedians that were the same way, and they were some of the greatest presenters out there. And it's kind of going, you accept them for just the fact that they had great humor and stuff like that about them. But it's kind of going, but now it's like everyone's becoming so offended. It's actually going to be like a two-part question. I'd like to ask about that person aspect first, and then we're going to get into the physicality of our great nation here. How far has the bar risen or dropped in the last,
It's definitely changed a lot, right? So before, like you said, you have people of all different backgrounds, demographics, everything in the military. It's always been that way, right? But then recently they make it feel like, they try to market it as it's not. And the military's always been a demographic mixing melting pot, right, for our country, always in the history.
Yeah.
But when it was under the, like you said, don't ask, don't tell, people just worked. That's all you cared about. I don't care what you do in your personal life. I don't care what your background is, what it is. I just need you to show up for work today, do your job. and that's it,
Right.
just perform. But it has changed. Like I've literally been to like set up, because to set up a range in the military takes a lot of time and effort, right? Because you're competing with other units, right, for space and assets. So to get something set up, it can take months to get a particular range for a training day. And I recall one, I went out to the range with a conventional unit, helping them. And, I'm sitting there waiting, the ammo's there. This one soldier's there. We're waiting on the soldier to show up. The lieutenant shows up and goes, "Oh, we got to cancel it." And I go, "What do you mean you got to cancel it? Why?" And they're like, "Well, we got some mandatory, the Army just said, this isn't the last year or so. We got mandatory training that we're required to do, right? It's a all call, all Army." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." So we go back and I'm like, "What could top going to the range, right? Because why would you not want to go?" And they don't go very often.
Yeah.
So we get back to the unit and I'm like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, you can sit in if you want." I'm like, "Well, what is it?" And they're like, "Well, we're getting pronoun training." And I'm like, "Are you fucking with me right now?" and, and they're like, "No, no,
Your
sir."
pronoun shit. That's
Yeah.
what it is right now. Your
So I
pronoun.
thought maybe it was going to be like camouflage, toenail, fingernail painting, or something like that, But the only color we can accept is camouflage, though,
Yeah, but it was because of like how they were supposed to engage with certain soldiers. And then also when they write their counseling and do their evaluations, you got to make sure you're using the right words and terms, or you're found offensive, and now you're a problem, not the
Right.
performance. Yeah.
Right.
So
Wow.
I was just like, holy cow, we're really marching the wrong drum right now. Like
Yeah.
the focus is like mission first. Like I can ask guys like, "Do you know the Army, the mission statement?" And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a mission statement," right? And it's pretty simple. It's win our country's wars. That's it.
Really?
And they have no clue. I'm like, "Oh my God." Right? Or like when I train them, I'm like, "You guys realize, like particularly infantry guys, right? You're being trained to kill other human beings.
Right.
That's your job." Right.
Right.
I don't know if anyone told you this. I don't know if it was in a brochure you got. So you need to be a little harder, because when you engage on the battlefield, that's your job, right? You're not there to hug, cuddle, hand out flowers, use the right pronoun, anything like that. So funny part too, before you get your second part, Dan, I told Don yesterday, I got a image from a guy that's over at one of the installations I work at, and he sent it, and there's a soldier walking down the street dressed in a furry outfit, right? Walked into the woods being videotaped, walked off and did a little poo off in the woods, and then walked his way back. And I'm just like, that's a soldier, right? That's a uniform. And nobody, no officer, no sergeant major, nobody said anything to him. Just people just drove by and let him do his thing.
Wow.
We're ready. We're ready to fight the Chinese.
But the sad part is there are guys that are great that have a lot of potential capability that are in the service, but they're kind of hindered by all the other stuff.
Yeah, like I say, again, the United States is that land of opportunity. Where do you think that furry would be if he was in China or in Russia or one of our other communist type
Be in
countries?
a camp.
How would they be treated? Would he even still be alive right now?
I'd be in a camp getting beat to death,
Oh, oh yeah, he'd be getting re-educated, retrained.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could be
And
getting
that's what,
he'd be getting housebroken.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, Carl, that's one thing that I talk about a great deal. I've been able to travel to literally every country that has ever had a wrestling program, and it's well, I tell people that I was even in Germany when there used to be two Germanys, both in East and West. Okay, and there was this thing called the Iron Curtain. To see the Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall. I mean, that was a real education where
He's showing
most of
off
it.
his memory skills right now, so go with it.
But most Americans, we we live in a land of opportunity because everything everything is at our fingertips. I always bring up the cell phone because everything is at our fingertips anymore.
Yep.
And we whine and cry if our latte, mocha, whatever is not quite the right temperature, stuff like that, lose our minds and stuff. I'm thinking you don't even understand about other countries where they don't even have drinkable water.
Yeah.
They don't have indoors toilets. They don't, the one tournament I was at, I go, you sippy do by the stench in the corner. The toilets are over there because, and there's no functioning water system there either.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Like I was in Germany when I first got in the military, in the Lurch unit over there at Wiesbaden, and it was a great assignment, great guys. All of them were coming out of Ranger Regiment, just great guys. But it was East and West Germany, you know. And years later, a friend of mine that came in special forces with me that I met through the units, Um, he was a former East German guy who multiple times, right, had tried to escape, got caught, got his ass beat, put in retraining, right? Had to go back, and then literally was in a retraining camp. Like the last time he tried to get out of East Germany, retraining camp, and like 3 days later, the wall came down, but he still had to do 5 more years. So his family walked across. He had to do 5 more years of training before he
Jeez.
got to the U.S. And then he became a Green Beret. You know,
Jeez.
and but
Wow.
That's a tough fucker right
oh
there.
yeah, that he was just he sounded like Arnold Schwarzenegger
Yeah.
when he talked, just his voice, his tone. And he ended up being a SEER instructor, one of our survival instructors. Just amazing guy. You know, I'll give you his info on the end here to look him up, to look at some of the videos, but just a super smart, great guy. But he went through a lot of shit. So then you had, you know, American soldiers with their first world problem.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, Dan, my coffee's not the right temperature. And this guy's got busted teeth that were being filed on and stuff like that, you know, and stitches all in his head. And you know, and you're trying to complain to him about your day, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, my buddy Brian Pope, he was a ranger, and until his parachute didn't open, and broke his back.
Mm,
But he became a insurance guy, and so now he owns a Quility, his own insurance company.
yeah.
And employs like 500 or 5,000 people. I don't know, but he says, yeah, I had a white people problem. My wife backed her Maserati into my Tesla. Yeah,
Yeah, the priorities are different now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yep. So, but yeah, it's definitely different though, Dan.
Okay. Okay, now let's go down to the physicality of today's graduating, senior out of high school. I mean, I'm picking high schoolers because that's usually a lot. We'll go into military, and that not too many people are going to go to college and then come right back out and then go right into the military type of realm. It's they should have been smarter. They should have done that right out of high school. But what are you seeing in the actual physicality of young men and women as they come out now? Has the bar risen, lowered? Is it staying the same?
No, I definitely think it's lowered. There's a lot of people with the passion. It's one of those things, right? It's like I can have all the passion in the world, want to be like a UFC fighter, but
Right.
that's not enough to make you a UFC fighter, right? And if you don't put the work, the physical piece in, and a lot of these, kids come in, they want to do, the hard jobs, but physically they're not there because if you, like you said, if you look at schools, um, you don't see kids outside playing. Kids aren't outside playing football, basketball. They're not riding bikes, right? They're not outside all day until the sun goes down and the light comes on and mom tells you to get home, right? They stay in the room all day. They're on the computer, they're on their phone, and it's very non-physical environment they grow up in, right? And if you challenge them on it, then they're convinced that like, well, you're a bad guy because you're telling me I'm overweight or I'm too skinny or I'm not putting enough work in.
Right.
So yeah,
You're the problem. Yeah.
yeah. So when they come in, they struggle. They really struggle, and they have. I think a lot of the standards have lowered, right, across the board. Um, and it's unfortunate because that affects like recruiting for special forces, for Delta Force, because we all, Ranger Regiment, because we pull all these guys or try to in the past, you could pull all these guys and staircase up through your career. Whereas now, because the quality, when the quality drops, if all you get every day is chicken nuggets, well, you're never going to get that,
Right.
that big T-bone steak, right? And so they just hover at that level of mediocrity. And then again, no one's really pushing it. And standards again have changed and how they do things. And and not to bash on anyone in particular, but I'll even say for both sexes, right? The big thing out there, everyone's like, oh, CrossFit. I do CrossFit. She does CrossFit. That's great for a good 3 minutes if I need you to really give me your best effort for 3 minutes.
Right. Right.
But when you go on, like for us, a deployment 6 months or a year, I need you to have your shit together for a year, not just 3 minutes.
Right.
You
And
know?
you got to be able to get punched in the fucking nose
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and be able to. And we talked about that last night.
Yeah.
Like a lot of guys have never been in a fight in their life, Dad. You think about high school. I'm sure you had some
Yeah,
scraps in high school.
you mean take Rock'em Sock'em Robots on the little remote controls? That doesn't count there. Come on, Carl. I'm almost undefeated in that. I got the two most overdeveloped thumbs in the world here now. Just going back like for yeah, look at me go.
Dan Severn's never been in a fight in his life. It's all competition to him.
Uh,
Well, Yeah, I'll say, but life,
Dot.
okay, life is competition, but no, I mean I'll say that just to let people know you don't have to get into an actual physical fight, but
No.
life is. I mean, if you life is competition, everything's competition. If
I
you want,
told that's why I told my wife, my ex-wife, and my children, life's competition. No, it isn't. Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Yes, it
you
is.
you co- you
She
compete for
whooped
the
my
best.
ass in that fucking divorce, boy.
Yeah,
Her lawyer did that.
That's a great marital counselor there too. It's always like sign a prenup. Make sure the prenup is double, triple. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Get a prenup, get a kid. You got any advice? Get a prenup. That's
Yep.
all you do.
Well, I mean, but even Carl, you mentioned one of my favorite actors again is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I like a lot of his movies. I think even the more cornier movies are some of his better movies. But at the same token, it's kind of going. He was also in charge at one point of the Presidential Physical Fitness Awards. When's the last time? When's the last time you even heard of that term, the Presidential Physical Fitness Awards? And it's the physicality. You can go to a high school today, and in that PE gym class, how many people are not even dressed out anymore?
Oh yeah.
They don't even participate, and yet why do they get passing grades?
Yeah.
And I look at that. I mean, like junior high was probably the most, I'll say, like controversial type thing because that's the first time that you're in that seventh grade, and now it's like going, and now you have to take a shower afterwards. It's like going, and you're in this classroom of you got 30 other guys there with you.
Yeah.
It's the first time that you're all going to go run into a shower because it's like the big old horse stalls with all the shower stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
but
But yeah,
Dan,
definitely.
Dan was real popular in the shower. So.
that was okay. You're thinking of Freddie Mercury there, Don. Just
Oh.
stop going there. It's Freddie Mercury here now. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was you singing the hit.
I know. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I definitely feel like standards have changed. There's a lot of people that still hold the line on it, are very good at it and do well, particularly in the soft community. These guys every single day aspire to that, right? But I think, there is a lot more leniency now towards certain things, and it's just not there. I mean, you can see it if you drive on post and go around it. Yeah, just the level of like unfitness is
Yeah.
just through the roof. I mean, they stopped doing, we used to do a thing called a DA photo, right? So you'd be in your uniform, get a picture of yourself, right? For promotions, you're competing against your peers. And that was to see if you were a big body, right?
Right.
And they got rid of it because they said, well, no, that's too offensive, right? You're like body shaming. It's like, yeah, but there's a standard, right?
Right.
But it's all changed across the board. I saw a video the other day, who with an officer, it's in the military today, a general, and he's in uniform, right, on stage doing interviews, and he's not even wearing the right army shoes, right? So it's like,
Really?
how can you expect others to maintain a standard when you can't do it? And it's just totally different now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting if anything gets a little rough.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that General Milley. What a fucking goof that guy is.
Horrible, absolutely horrible.
He's a fucking traitor. I mean, to call up the Chinese and say, I'll tell you, he's a fucking traitor. They should have pulled him out and shot him on TV. I'm serious, man.
Pay-per-view though.
Yeah. Fuck, let everybody see it, man. Let everybody see it.
But
He's a fucking traitor.
But he undermined it a lot, I think. I really do think so.
Yeah.
You had same thing, with some other generals. There's some great guys. Like right now, there's guys out there that I've worked with that are phenomenal guys, right? So like General Fenton or Rick Angle, great Americans, great patriots, right? But there's been others here recently, like that working at the schoolhouse when I worked at schoolhouse is like literally talk about lowering the standards. We're like, okay, so it used to be like when you went through the Q course for special forces, once you failed a phase, any phase, that was pretty much it for you. You were done. And you might be told you could come back in a year. You might be told you can't come back ever. And then under this one regime, if you will, he came in, and next thing you know, we're recycling officers left and right. And I'll tell you a true story. One of these particular officers had failed the final phase of the Q course 3 times, right?
Jeez.
Failed it 3 times and was then allowed one more attempt, went to a different team, went to an easier, lane, right? Because we do a thing called Robin Stage where you're in scenario in role in North Carolina working with locals, right? So you're in their home and you're It's like you're really in a real war, right? Because the locals are helping you and helping to move you around, transport you, all this. That guy failed, went to third group, and then of course you had the incident in Africa where that team got all shot up and a bunch of soldiers got shot up. This has been about 6, 7 years ago, and got shot to pieces, and that was his team.
Was he McCain?
No, it wasn't McCain. Yeah, but it was pretty bad though, and we were sitting there, me and the instructor that I was working with at the time, and we're just like, yeah, that was him. He should have never been
Right.
there, period.
In charge of anything, right?
Yep. So, but
Shouldn't be in charge of a fucking Dairy Queen. Yeah.
No, it's ridiculous. So, but yeah, it definitely happens. But like I said, there's still some great guys out there doing great work, phenomenal guys, and some characters that you would, you could write books and movies and sitcoms about, that no one ever hears about.
Well, tell us the story then.
Spit
it out, boy. Spit it out.
Well, I'll give you one. There's I'll try to do the quick version. So there was a general that I was working for at one point, a guy named General Harrell. So if you watch the movie Black Hawk Down, he was the colonel at the time in charge of Delta Force during Black Hawk Down.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal guy. When I met him, he was a big boy. He was working out all the time. I was working out all the time. So he and I would go to the gym together. And but his personality was he was a 1-star then.
Yeah.
And he was very much almost kind of like a bully, but not. He was sound, like tactically sound. So at headquarters in CENTCOM, we'd walk into a briefing and stuff like that. And I was in civilian clothes, suit and tie. And he's like, all right, come on, Carl, sit down right here. And I was like, well, sir, there's someone sitting there, And he would look at the name tag and it'd be some other like 2-star general from the Air Force. And he's like, yeah, fuck that guy. And he's like, have a seat, sit here with me, right? And I'd sit down. And then this Air Force general would come in and be like, oh, excuse me, sir, I think you're in. And, General Howard would be like, he's good, Bob. Find another fucking seat. And he'd look at me and go, oh, okay. And I'm sitting there like, I'm really sorry, but he's my ride. I came here with him. Like, but that same guy, when I was being swapping out with another guy, I had a friend of mine that was working there at the time, the unit, and he came in and he sits down and I'm introducing him to General Harrell. And we're in his office. And the guy's name, he's a Puerto Rican guy, great guy, right? A retired warrant officer. Great guy. He sits down and his last name was, Hispanic name, but he went by the nickname of Ruby, right?
Yeah.
So when I introduced him, I said, hey, General, this is Ruby. He's going to take my place. He goes, Ruby, I don't like it. Sounds gay. How about I call you Rudy? Right? And he wouldn't call him Ruby. He called him Rudy the whole meeting, right? And the whole time he's sitting there, and I'm not making this shit up. He's sitting there with like a little tomahawk he got from like Apaches or Comanches, that the unit gives a commander when he leaves. And he's sitting there playing around with it, right? And we're sitting here like where I am, and then Ruby's sitting like right here, the door shut, and he's talking to him. He said, "Well, all I can tell you, Rudy, is Carl keeps me in the loop. I'm never caught by surprises." He goes, if you fuck that up or you ever lie to me, and he threw the tomahawk like right at him. And there's a target. He had a target on the wall.
Yeah.
Right. It threw it. It's stuck on the wall. He goes, I'll cut your balls off. and we're sitting there. I said, all right, sir. He said, all right, I'll see you at the gym later. We walked out and Ruby was like shaking. He's all sweaty. Like, oh my God. I was like, well, that went well.
Yeah. What do you think?
But the guy was awesome. He was, I liked him. He was hard on people, but I think rightly so at times, and he just passed away, I think it was last year there at the VA hospital in Tennessee in Johnson City. But just a great guy, and then the guys that worked with him, those guys all ended up doing exceptionally well, so, but yeah, he was a character though. Yep.
Yeah. Well, kind of like I'll say a little more somber note there, Carl. I always tell people that if you, as an American, I think everybody should go and visit at least Washington, D.C. at some point in time. They should go see some of these great monuments that are still there and intact. But they should also take a visit over to Arlington Cemetery to understand, first off, I mean, how beautifully and mathematically that place has been laid out. I mean, no matter where you stand, how every buried soldier, it's so uniform. But then to go over and see, the various monuments of the for Vietnam and other ones where with one stroke of the hand you could have just crossed over, who knows how many hundreds of names to understand that freedom is not free.
Yeah.
Someone paid a price for you to be whatever it is you want to be. So it's when I tell people that, I can give two shits what you want to be in this world as long as it doesn't impede upon me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I always tell people, do your naked cartwheels in your backyard, not in your front yard. Because if I'm sitting in my living room looking out my front window, I don't want to be seeing, Don Fry doing naked cartwheels, okay, across the
You
street
do
from me.
too. You That's a fantasy of yours.
And only if I could sell, if I could make a few bucks off of it online later. That's all. That's all.
Now it comes down. The tooth comes
You
out.
sit there with this camera going, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
exactly.
disgusting. Just disgusting. It's gonna go viral.
That was horrible. Do it one more time.
I'm
Can't go left and right side. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But you're right. That like Arlington's one of my favorite places to go. I've got friends out there, and I've got a baby brother that died very young that was buried there because my dad, like I said, was in World War II, so he has a plot out there. And it's
But even watching like the changing of the guard,
yeah,
of the tomb of the unknown soldier, to be there to see that. I mean, and oh, I mean, to me that is something that every American should see.
yeah.
It's because, as I say, freedom is not free. People pay prices. You just don't know what goes on. You know.
Well, it's like certain people said, there's consequences for elections. Well, there's consequences for the decisions of those people as
Right.
well.
Right.
So you look at
severe consequences.
you look at the whole, Benghazi thing that, was just horrific.
Mm-hmm.
And there was people in place to help them and support them. And it just never happened. The call never came.
Right.
So people are, now buried in Arlington that because of something that should have never happened,
Right.
and people don't understand it. So the same people that, want to yell about, their rights and, I can take the American flag and burn it are the same ones that don't realize how many people sacrifice so much.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
These are the fucking people who don't like America. They're the fuckers who've never been off their own block. They haven't seen the real world. They know nothing about the rest of the world.
Nope. It's very different out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it's surreal. What you see, some of the things happening now.
Well, Carl, are you married man, or do you have children or anything like that? Or
I'm married. She's sitting in the studio right now,
okay, all right. So is that why you're on good behavior?
Yeah, we got gag over.
Yeah, we got a gag. She literally was like,
got her tied, hog tied down.
Oh.
My daughter's in town with me as well. She wanted to go out and shop and look around. She spent some time with us yesterday. Dawn was, nice enough to have us over to the house, for dinner. And so she got to hang out and sit there and talk. But yeah, so doing pretty well. Life's good. The work keeps you busy, but at some point, there's days now like, it's like with taxes, I'm like, why am I giving my money to Ukraine every day? So when I go to the stores and stuff, they're like, oh, would you like to donate for this? Or would you like to tip this vendor? I'm like, no, I'm already donating. They're like, oh, well, who? I'm like, well, I've got, families in Ukraine counting on my tax dollars, and I've got some other people that are here illegally that really need my help. So
This guy by the name of Uncle Sam keeps dipping into my pocket all the time here right now, but I don't see him ever coming to help me on any of my projects here whatsoever. But he likes to dip into my pocket. Yes.
yeah.
What about that crazy shit? Harris wants to tax unrealized gains.
Yeah, that's insane.
That is fucking insane.
So you can take someone that's living in, Montana, its own property, his whole life generationally passed down, and somehow they feel they can tax that, even if it's paid off. And then, oh, we're entitled to the money that you should tax it. And the only way a person could do that would be to sell pieces.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, we're going to charge you for what you could get.
Yeah.
It's anybody who even remotely thinks that's justifiable needs to have their ass kicked.
Yep. It frustrates me to see, like, the homeless people, veterans that are out there without homes or work or transportation, but we're giving all this other stuff for free. And literally, they're tapping into like VA systems to support, individuals. They're tapping into Social Security to support these things. And it's just like, it's just criminal.
Well, that's the thing about Social Security was never supposed to be touched. Never. It was supposed to just amass, and they got their greedy little hands in it right away.
Yep.
And they now it's going to go broke.
Yep.
And everybody they're scratching their head and their ass. They can't figure out why.
Yeah. So like my wife, what she does, she works with VA, veterans claims, trying to help soldiers get, what they should get for their disabilities and that. Because if they don't do it, that's money they're giving to someone else.
Right.
So, a lot of times, particularly again, generationally, older generations don't want to go in and say, oh, I was hurt, I was injured, or I need some help financially.
Right.
So you got to almost convince them, like, look, man, if you don't, it's never going to be there for you later. So you need to look at your resources, what are available. Because if they don't, you don't tap into it, they're going to give it to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Somebody who doesn't even belong here. Yeah.
yep. So,
That's what's insane.
Carl, something that we that Don and I talk about all the time, that you could easily fix the political realms in the United States simply by fact checking, because the only person that would be against fact checking is the person who's lying.
yeah.
And so it's like, if there was fact checking that would take place, if there are term limits, knowing that you only get two shots there, and then can you steal enough money in two terms before you have to go and live amongst those people that you just stole from for the last 8 years?
Yeah.
You know, but then I came back with a third. There's the third one there, to Mr. Fry, that I've added to it, and that would be
Snap.
campaign fund limits.
Yep.
That it, again, just simply say that each campaign political person is only allowed a max, like, say, 1 million bucks. Because how much can you polish a turd? A turd is still a turd. I don't care how much you want to try to polish it, how much you want to try to lie, and what you're seeing here going into this next election, blatant lies.
Oh my God.
Just blatant lies here right now. And I'm like
Literally.
going, fact checking would resolve this, term limits would resolve this. And if we put a campaign cap, look at all the money that could go to help Americans.
Right. Well, there should be, with that donation, my thinking on it, there should be the cap. But at the end of the season, once the election's done, that money, take it all and give it to charity, give it to veterans, right?
Right.
Give it to homeless shelters, because you're not a candidate anymore.
Right.
So, but they rewash that money and put it in their pockets,
Yeah.
So that money, the millions get raised in Clinton Foundation, whatever, right?
Yep.
At the end of it, you didn't win. All right, so people out of good faith gave you millions or billions of dollars, but millions,
Right.
millions of dollars. All right, you didn't win. So
You didn't spend it.
here are 5 charities you can give it to.
Right.
Where do you want to send it?
Right.
Well, I'm going to run in 4 more years. Well, in 4 more years, you can try to raise more money.
Right.
Yep.
They'd start the
Yeah.
Clinton Foundation, though. They start their own charity.
Yeah. Once they figured out how to launder the money, everybody
Yeah.
was going, oh, well. But yeah, no one ever asked at the end of the campaign season, where did that money go?
That's what I want to know about all the money we've been taxed, all these years, and it's supposed to take care of the infrastructure. Every 98% of the bridges are no good in the country.
Yeah.
What happened to that fucking money?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Yep. Yeah, because it all just kind of got pandered away.
Right.
You look at the bridge. I used to live in Baltimore for a while, and when they hit the Francis Scott Key Bridge, with the ferry, and it was like, oh yeah, the whole thing fell. A mile and something, a bridge with like multiple support structures just magically fell. But then they're like, oh, but we'll raise money and take tax dollars and rebuild. Is like a ferry hit it, and the whole thing just fell. If you knew it was that bad, like, again, let's fix it, let's repair
Well,
it.
and then Biden says we're going to pay for it all. It's a fucking Chinese ferry. The Chinese should pay for the fucking thing.
On top of it, the city of Baltimore has insurance on it, and the bridge itself had insurance on it.
Right.
So why is a federal taxpayer got to pay for it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because Biden's dirty. Biden is the dirtiest fucking senator. He's that movie senator that we all see in all the movies, man. That's Biden.
Yeah. I tell my wife, some of them are like Bond villains. Like you can't make that shit up.
Right.
Like, it's literally like the guy living in a castle on the hill. You're like, so you got all your little, your characters, like that one guy that had all that stuff to do with COVID. Fauci, right? So you look at him, that's a Bond villain right there.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Well, Carl, if we got some young men and women that have to watch this episode, if they don't know what to do with life and that, what are some of your recommendations? What they should do to mature themselves, or maybe look into?
I'd say if you're looking to go to college, pick a real job, right? So there is no English factory popping up anywhere. So if you get a degree in French lit or English, it's not really going to be beneficial to you. Medical, people always born, get sick, they die. So medical industry, if you want to help people, right, truly help them. Military, if you look at military, then look to excel, do your best, seek out something that's challenging and rewarding. The easy route, the easy route's never my experience is never like the right route. It's never the good route. It's never the one that you feel like you benefit from, right? Like most humans, we benefit from struggle, right? You get better, you improve because of that. So pick something challenging, you push yourself, so if it's a military, then look at that. If you're looking at, the Navy or Air Force or any other branch, we'll do something that's challenging, make your time worthwhile. Because, in theory, we get one shot. So make the most of it so that you got something to reflect on and remember, like, yeah, I was part of that, or I did that, versus listen to the mob think kind of thing and push the easy button, hang out, do nothing. And, at the end of the time, you're the one that's going to look at yourself and be like, shit, that was a shit run.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as school, I think it's good. But, I also think, like you said earlier, Dan, I think it's unfortunate. They pulled like all your trade craft stuff out of your schools, right? So you like auto mechanic, electrician, like when I went to school, you could take carpentry, electrical, and all that kind of stuff, automotive.
Right.
And now those skills are lacking because no one wants to do it, right? But the same people make fun of guys that do that because you're paying them thousands of dollars to do it.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, the guy put his time in, and that's a job that you need for society to function, right?
Damn right.
You don't need, a barista at 50 different stores to make your society function.
Right. Yeah.
But I do need a plumber, So, find your path. It works for you. It's going to be good for you. But, and then your family, focus on, your family and spend time with them. And, particularly, your kids and that. So be a good example for them. That was always like one of my driving things, earlier, Tony asked me about like, what kind of kept you going. And a lot of times in those courses.
Hey, we don't mention his name. We just call him.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, the guy.
So that guy, all right.
Don't give me any credit.
Sorry, let me
Don't
pull that
acknowledge
back.
him.
But a lot of those events when I had days that were like really struggling, my big focus is like, I don't want to do anything that embarrasses my daughter, right? Or hinders, my pay that impacts her, right? Because there's times, that you have encounters, you're like, the easiest thing would be like, I'll just smash this guy in the head. And it was like,
yeah,
no, that affects my pay for her. But at the same time, if they're doing something that's going to affect like what, how I, was able to provide for her, then that was going to be an issue, right? So if someone like made something up or said something, I'd be like, no, that's not how it goes. You're not going to impact my pay because you're being stupid. But the big thing was just making sure I was doing right by her. So at the end of the day, she'd be like, okay, yeah, it's good. Like she'll tell you, like I very seldom, team life, guys like to go out and when there's downtime, like warriors do, you got downtime, you enjoy yourself, right? But when it's time to work, you work.
You may die tomorrow.
Yeah. But with her, like she'd never grown up. She might have seen me drink twice her whole life, right? I tried to ensure I didn't cuss around her, didn't drink around her, just want to be a good example.
Oh, I don't drink it from my kid.
Oh no, that's all changed now. That's all changed now.
Ice pack.
Yeah, we were drinking last night, but the thing was, I just wanted her to know, that it wasn't a necessity, wasn't part of the job that I had to do, particularly around her. I didn't want her exposed outside. Hell, when she started dating guys and stuff like that, they were like, well, what does your dad do? And she's like, he's in the Army. What does he do? It's like, he's a Green Beret. And they'd like, what? And then guys,
where's this funny hat?
And they would, and they would Google it and stuff like that. And you'd be like, holy shit. Like, do you know what he does? She goes, well, no, he just goes off, does trips and comes home, because I didn't, talk about work at home.
Yeah. Like my daughter, my buddy Brian came in and he ran me to the hospital because saved my life a couple of times.
Yeah.
And he'd sit there with my kids, I was in the hospital. Said, do you know anything about your dad? Do you know what he does?
Yeah.
No. Do you ever seen a fight? No, never. So he showed them, and now they look at me different, All right. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to change your plans on the fly during a mission?
Change plans on the fly. Yeah, there's well, I think most of it there's an expression, and this is all branches of particularly soft, right? Where the order's only good until you go out the door.
Right.
So you spend hours or days prepping for missions, right? And you brief and you rehearse and you rehearse. But the minute you step off the aircraft or step into that environment, everything changes. Everything. The minute the first round cracks, or like you see like in the movie like Black Hawk Down, right? So the first time the guy gets hurt falling off the rope, well, everything just goes to shit.
Right.
And at that point, you frag it. Everything's a frago, and you just adapt on the fly and make it work. And luckily you got great guys around you that help you, like, coach you through situations, and, or come up with good sound decisions, because you're trying to do it quick in a timely manner. So that's one thing in soft it's amazing. You see it a lot in range of regiment guys, where you tell a guy to do something and he executes, right? So, and that was the thing, it was hard for me to kind of turn off when I got in the civilian life, right?
Yeah.
Where you tell someone to do something, I don't need you to think, I just need you to execute, right? If I
Right.
say go left, don't ask me why. Well, Bobby went left yesterday. How come I got to go left?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just shut up and execute, right? And those units, soft units, are very good at that typically, right? I just need you to execute right now. We'll talk about it all later. This is not a conversation, right? And then some people struggle with that. They can't do it when you put them on the spot and say, just don't talk, just go execute.
Right.
And now, it's difficult to get guys to do it, because, like, well, how come me? I feel like you're calling on me all the time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, I can rely on you, asshole.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
the coach. If the coach is
Mhm.
on your ass giving you shit, he don't care about you.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. There's a, a funny story for you. So I was doing some stuff, as I'm advising some people overseas. I was in Africa, but it was going great. I volunteered to go over to replace, because I just got back from Iraq. So I volunteered to go over and help, another guy that couldn't go because he was having a baby. Family was having a baby. So I said, well, I'll go. Right. And this is like a day after I got home.
Mhm.
So I pack up, I go. I'm only supposed to be there like 3 months. 3 months into it, right? I get a call like, hey, we got to extend you. Right. I'm like, okay, doesn't matter to me. Right. Because I'm over in, Africa on the East Coast. Time comes for me to rotate out. I've been planning, talking to this guy I knew for years. He's swapping out with me, and I developed a relationship with the commander. The general there at the time was a Marine commander, and everything was going great. So I pack up, getting to do some, like, what you would call like cool guy shit. Right? I'm like, man, I'm gonna out here in the middle of nothing. Bird's gonna come in, dark, pick me up, get on a plane, leave. He'll stay. So I get out there. I'm like, okay, this is it. And comes in, lands. Um, he comes up, the guy named Butch comes up, brings these two Pelican cases up, says, hey man, sign this, Arbo. So I like sign it. So I'm thinking I'm signing over like radios and equipment that I'm leaving for him to use. Right.
Yeah. Right.
I get on the aircraft, he takes it, signs it, brings these two Pelican cases, sets them off. So I load them in the truck because it's, I'm thinking it's his equipment. He comes up, starts, shakes my hand and goes, turn around, walk off. I'm like, what are you doing, Butch? What are you doing? He goes, the boss didn't get hold of you today. I'm like, well, no, why? What do you mean? He's like, well, he was trying to call you. I'm like, for what? He goes, the old man, he goes, the general, he doesn't want anyone here but you. And I'm like, are you fucking with me? And he slaps me on the back. He goes, next time, brother, strive for mediocrity. And so he turned around, got on a bird, flew away. So I went right back, walked in, knocked on the general's door. Great guy. Knock on his door. I'm like, hey, sir. He's like, hey, how you doing, Carl? He goes, I tried calling you. I go, well, sorry, I didn't have my phone because I was leaving. So it's in the office, right, for this other guy. He goes, yeah, I called your boss, and he goes, don't hate me. I said, no, it's fine. I said, so how long are we staying? He's like, well, 6 more months. And I'm like, oh, so like I think it was supposed to be, a couple of weeks, turned into quite a long time. But he was phenomenal, great to work with. And years later, I ran into him. He was the commander out in Okinawa for the Marines. And
Yeah.
if anything I needed, for my team and stuff, for ranges and stuff, he was like, nope, whatever he wants, give it to him.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, so strive for mediocrity. I was like, but my wife will tell you, I really suck at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You always want to do extra. I just feel like you want to improve it. So what
Well,
about you?
that's part of your legacy, though. I mean, that's I look at that. That's a legacy that you leave behind.
I gotta see a man about a horse.
Yep, yep. So Dan, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I asked Don last night, when you were, competing peak of your game, because I look at both you guys, right? I grew up watching you guys, right? Like I'm only a little bit younger than you, and watching you guys was phenomenal. But the style was very different. But the question I asked him was like, was there ever an opponent you went against that it was a little more, not, I won't say difficult, but it was just a little more challenging because it was someone you were like personally close with, like, outside of the octagon, all that. It was someone that you worked out with, sparred with, or just, knew.
Well, I mean, there was at one point in time that the ownership of the UFC was trying to make Don and myself fight each other. And at the time, I go, Don, let them run with it for right now. Don't worry about it. But can I'm just because I'm older than Don. I just let them run with it for a little bit. And I go, will it ever happen? No, because I always I look at that. Don and I, we have, I mean, we have a friendship there. But I mean, I was part of Don's coaching staff when I was at Arizona State University. And Bobby Douglas was the head coach. I was assistant coach. Don lived with a couple of my younger brothers, so I knew Don much like a younger brother.
Yeah.
So, and even when I would go and visit with my brothers, I would be seeing him on a much more regular personal type basis there as well. So, I mean, it was never going to happen. Um, you know, they're really, I don't think there's anyone that I was really close with when it came to the actual fight game. Um, there were people that it might be hard to believe, but I'll say that I always look for the nicest way to finish somebody off.
Yeah.
I did a lot of choke holds and a lot of scarf chokes.
Yeah.
The people, and that actually was a very nice route. The only person I ever had like an axe to grind was probably with the Tank Abbott, just because of how he presented himself, how kind of an evil character that he was, and was in real life. So, you know,
Yeah. He always
so
struck me as kind of like a bully or something like that. Was just going to like try to, use that as his
yeah,
intimidate and bully. Like, like you two gentlemen, I
Where's
always
the
looked at,
bartender at?
and
Bartender, this place sucks.
I always looked at you two guys, and even looking at today, because I still follow, the fights today, but how your two styles of technique were very different, but it made the UFC, honestly, my own opinion, what it is today, right? Like the
Technique.
guys,
You're describing what I did as technique.
I look at it more like that kind of pound, but also like that wrestling background that both of you brought in, where guys today aren't very successful if you can't wrestle and if you don't have some sort of aggression, right? The ones that want to just stand up and punch don't do so well and when they hit the ground. I mean, that's why, certain guys, just like we talked yesterday, retired because they were very good wrestlers.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of
well,
guys now look at you guys are like, this is a great example.
yeah. On that same note, there, I mean, you also have Justin Gagey
Yeah.
that was I mean, he has a great wrestling pedigree.
Yeah.
But has he ever used his wrestling pedigree? No. And I've had some discussions with him in the past. Was like going, if you're within arm's reach to grapple, you can punch or you can grapple. I go, but he's won more fight of the night bonuses, I think, than anybody else.
Yeah.
And he did have one vicious, I'll say, loss just recently when I mean, in the final, when the clock is ticking down, they get down to that final 30 seconds. He's always pointing down that he wants to be out in the center of the cage, and he just really wants to go toe to toe. Well, I mean, the guy that's sitting across from you there, Don Fry. I mean, Don has probably been in some of the most top half a dozen fights. Period. The number one most viewed is Takayama and Don Fry in Pride. I mean, that is by far the number one most viewed combat match in history, where for 45 seconds you see two guys that are literally, they each have a collar tie on each other and they're playing a game of chicken. It's kind of like a punch in the face here right now there, Carl. When are you going to quit? And then you're just punching me back in the face going, well, Dan, I'm not going to quit anytime soon here right now because I plan on knocking you out in the process. Who won? The people won because they witnessed something that they'll never, ever see again. Because not too many people are as bullheaded as that guy sitting across from me there.
Yeah. Wait,
again,
technical.
Okay, but no, but there also people understand that is one element from a coach's perspective. You can't. It's hard to develop heart, and that's what I call it being bullheaded. But it's having that heart to go out there. It's, that heart and boneheaded determination to see something through. So it's those are hard things from a coaching perspective to instill into others. I mean, there's ways that you can kind of develop it through practice and stuff like that, but then you have to it's a fine line. And you'll have some people that they'll quit on you, and you go, no, doggone it, you can't quit, and you got to drag them back in, and the whole 9 yards. So it's there's a lot that goes to it that
Yeah, like when you talk about coaching and working with people, we talked about last night. It's like a team sergeant in SF and Special Forces. It's you always want them to do better than you did. You always want them to perform at their best. You don't want them to quit. It's like, I'm not going to quit on you. You step it up and perform. So when you look at it, and also from that perspective, as I'm sure a coach and a team sergeant and all that, it's rewarding to see them excel as well, right? Like you
Yeah.
see it and you feed off that. You're like, man, that's it. You nailed it. Everything we talked about and we rehearsed or said, let's try to do this, and they executed. And that's super rewarding. I mentioned like the women's basketball team. I had the first year there were 5 freshman girls that were recruited by the outgoing coach, and the new coach came in and she was amazing, but she had a very aggressive behavior. She came from a program like a not what Division I at the time. It was up in Pennsylvania, um, but she was very aggressive with it. So these 5 girls that were freshmen, she didn't recruit them. They weren't her pick.
Mhm.
So she was super hard on them, right? And they came in one day. They came to me and they said, hey, I think we're gonna quit. And I'm like, excuse me. So I took them into my classroom I had there, and I said, well, let's take a look at this. All right. I said, where did you go to school? When did you start basketball? It's like, well, I started this age. Well, how many people watch you? Right. And so we just started doing some math, right? Like, all right, when I was 12, I had like, this many, my parents and family friends would come out. And then when I went to middle school, this many students sat in the bleachers and watched me play because I went to a big middle school or a small one. And then it was like, well, what about high school? And then it was start adding the numbers up. And so at the end, the 5 girls, it was into the thousands. Right. And I said, so let me get this straight. You've got these people in the thousands. You think you're fucking phenomenal. You deserve to be here. But because of this one person, you're going to throw it all away. I said, look, at the end of the day, she's a new hire. She's here because she supposedly can coach. Then make her fucking coach. You're so good, make me better. Right? If you're this legendary coach, then make me better. Right? And I even had to talk with the coach. And the 5 girls stayed. She coached them. They were phenomenal. They set records on 3-point shots, block shots, all kinds of shit. But again, I worked on them too, as far as like you gotta have a bit of an animal mentality.
Right.
One girl's a volleyball player and she'd like block a shot and they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, you don't ever fucking do that.
No.
At the end of the game, you could go up, shake her hand, say, hey, I'm really sorry about that. But I said during the heat of the moment, and she was a tall girl and she'd like get down her face, be like, ah, like, and I'm like, that's what I want.
Exactly. It's
We're-
all part of
we're-
the intimidation. It's all part of the intimidation.
Yeah.
Different. There's again, and Don will verify this. I mean, there's all types of. I mean, you have your physical presence, but then there's your facial expression, and there's audio. It's just the 3 magical ingredients that you have, and that's
Oh, yeah.
where my first profession was professional wrestling as of 1992 Olympics. UFC didn't even exist at that point in time. I jumped into professional wrestling first, and then when I started learning about tactics of the heel, tactics of the baby face, it's kind of like going, okay, well, starting in the cage here, 101, is like going, I don't want to be skipping to the cage and stuff like that. Prancing, skipping into, oh, here we go.
No, but you were Tubby Tanaka, right?
Well, that would be good, but again, that's where Don brings up a great aspect there. When I first began, I used to work twice on the card, but once as an alter ego to myself, I was this heel Tubby Tanaka. That I mean, I wore a complete bodysuit that I weighed well over 300 pounds of a hood over my face, hand gloves and foot ornaments. And I mean, I berated the American people to where whoever I wrestled, it was easy for them to get the USA chant because I cheated and did so many things as this evil foreigner. And I always tell people that Tubby Tanaka's record was unblemished. I never won a single match, and they loved it every time I lost because it would be due to my arroganceness or whatever that I would end up screwing myself. And then, but they simply loved it.
Yeah.
But
But I do remember you 2 gentlemen had like some of the best stare downs ever, during fight.
oh,
Like you're staring.
Don had to stare down
Oh,
there. It's like
he definitely did. You did too. You had some too, where because you were a presence out there with some of those guys in the early ones. But yeah, both of you guys, I remember like watching some of the stare downs, and you could tell the other guy was like, "Holy shit, this is real now. It just got real."
Dan was too busy grilling Big John McCarthy with little quips and questions.
But were you?
well, no, it's just comical. I mean, because what Don just brings up is just that the first time I ever met John was actually inside the octagon cage, and literally he goes over and talks to your opponent there. Same type of information he's going to come over and just grill you with there. And and for whatever reason, he always ends it the same. Are there any questions? Well, when he hit that line, and when he hit me with that line, are there any questions? I couldn't think of nothing, but just as he's turning his head away, the goofy little notation of I simply said out loud, where did all that money go that my parents paid for piano lessons? And he said he heard it, but when he looked back at me in the face, I had my game face on at that point in time. So it's kind of going, he didn't think it was me, but by match number two, going back to the 8-man tournament format, he's match number two, he's hitting me the same thing. I know what's about to come. And he goes, uh, are there any questions? And at that point in time, I simply said, if you'd simply give me the winning lotto ticket numbers, I wouldn't have to do this shit, something like that. And he looks at me like this guy's crazy because I'm saying one liners to him, but at the same token, it's kind of going just the way I kind of let off a little bit of much steam. It's kind of like going, it's just it's like anyone else that gets in a high stress type of situation, you just got to say something kind of like silly and off the wall. That's all.
Yeah.
Much different than when that woman challenged you to a fight. So what happened on that one, boy?
Oh, no, you get some you definitely run into some
Dub. Come on.
Which one? Which one?
When the woman challenged you to a fight.
No, I had one.
You've had more. You've had this happen on multiple occasions, or
I've had during some training, there was a certain female that was in this, like you talk about standards, right? So she was in the training environment, and her assumption was, like I said, like not to bash on them, but like CrossFitters are all like, well, I'm a CrossFitter, I do this or I do that,
right?
And but in this one particular situation, during the sparring, right, we had guys coming in to coach us on jujitsu and some striking and some other stuff. And she went against this one captain, and she, there's a move you do, right? Where it's called a cup hand blow, where you're trying to smack them across the ear, get them off balance, right? Bust the eardrum, and then do what you need to do, or break contact and get away. Well, she got up there, and she was a big girl, right? Probably 6 feet tall, little, Teletubby body, right? And she hit this captain. Well, he was a skinnier, leaner dude, but she hit him across the ear. So it's sort of like when you guys train, if you're training with a partner that understands what you're doing, the best ones are seasoned guys because they're not going to try to hurt you, right? They know they go 70%. They know what they got to do. Young guys are the worst because they don't have control.
Right.
So they wrench your arm. They're the one that, fuck your knee up or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't understand that. So she hit this guy and really, really hurt him. So we're getting ready to rotate. And I said, look, just so you know, I'm not that fucking guy. So if you fuck around, you want to act like a man, I'll treat you like a man.
Right.
And she was like, oh yeah, calm down, blah, blah, blah. And she tried that shit. And I rolled with it, but I came back with a backhand and knocked her the fuck out. And so then when she got up, it was like, well, we are not the same. Right. I was like, you can say whatever you want. You're here, but you're here under a different premise and different platform. Right. We do not do the same shit. Right. And then, after that, she was fine and everything kind of went its separate ways. But I was like, no. You want to fuck around and play games, you'll win stupid prizes. Right. But then the other women doing this training, of course, are like, got it. 70% means 70%.
Yeah, that's like this.
And I wasn't necessarily proud of that, but it was just like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? I'm not going to teach them. Well, it's like, like we said in the sports and what I do and what you gentlemen do, you don't want something that's going to end your career because you're being a dumbass. There's people here trying to be in this organization, and that guy she just heard, like that could have fucking been it for him.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, you picked the wrong guy. You should have rotated counterclockwise.
Right. Well, it was like, with Riley Gaines, I mean, because a few years ago, I helped up Dwayne Ludwig and Boss Rutan. They were doing a seminar, and I was there, and I helped them out, and didn't overstep my boundary, but apparently I did.
Yeah.
Because there's two girls, and this is, you're not as strong as a guy, so you might want to adjust it, and to fit your body style and your strength and all that. And so I got a call from Boss saying, Don, we can't use you anymore.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So what do you mean? He says, well, you told these girls that they're not as strong as men. And that's just, what are you fucking talking about? They're not. It's just, I know that, but we can't say that to them, but so as soon as, this guy thinking he's a girl, won the national championship, I laughed my ass off about it, man. Shit. Men should not be competing with women.
No.
Well, what's wrong about that though, Don, is you were doing the right thing. You were actually trying to teach this girl how to use her body or whatever
Right.
against in the right way, not in her head thinking that she can just knock this man out. It's like you
Right.
actually need to try to change away your strategy, and you might be able to do this.
Yeah, you adjust it.
Yeah.
To fit your capabilities.
Yeah.
But
Like-
no, Don, you're wrong because you're trying to do the right thing. Being
Yeah.
honest. Honesty is
It's horrible.
unfortunately not the best policy.
No, not anymore.
Like I used to teach, some of the women on campus, students and that, like, and soldiers, females, like, ways. And a buddy of mine actually, when his daughter was getting ready to go overseas, asked me to help, teach her on some fighting,
Mhm.
to help her as far as like, like a rape prevention kind of thing.
Right.
And, so the things I pointed out, I was like, look, at the end of the day, you're not going to sit there and do a slugfest with this guy. I don't care how fit you are, what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? His drive and motivation is totally different than yours, right? But, it should be, if you're going to strike, but try to avoid even getting that distance where it has to come to that.
Yeah.
And then if you do something, it better be quick, fast, deliberate, right? Like with real intent behind it, because your goal is to break contact. Not
Like
to
a
stay.
banny rooster, you get in, get out.
Yeah, you're not looking to engage, right?
Right.
You're not looking for her to engage with some 6'5" dude.
Right.
Like, if you got to hit him to get distance to do it, and then get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Because it's a mentality thing. Because the minute they think, oh, I can stay here and spar with that, it's like there's a reason heavyweights, like why the game has changed. Like heavyweights don't fight flyweights because mass equals ass, right? And it'll fuck you up. There's a reason Manny Pacquiao doesn't fight Mike Tyson.
Right. Right.
Manny's very good at his weight, but if he took one punch, from Mike in the day, right?
Kill him. Yeah.
Kill him.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, but again, it wasn't trying to be derogative, and they understood that. They knew, like, I'm trying to help you, like, survive, right?
Yeah.
And get out of that situation. I don't want you to throw your legs around him and try to put him in an arm race or something.
What are your thoughts on this whole Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight coming up here like in a week or two?
My own opinion, man, I still think, it's the old saying, like, age and perseverance, right? I still think Mike would crush him, right?
Old age and treachery.
Yeah, treachery, exactly. Because I think, he, Jake's done a lot, training. He's, when he gets in there, he'll be prepared. But there's nuances to the sport that he doesn't know. He's not been exposed to, and again, Mike's still,
Still Mike Tyson.
Still Mike
He can
Tyson.
still punch.
Yeah,
He can-
and the guy can take a punch.
yeah.
Right. Because I don't recall him ever really, except for a couple fights there at the end, but getting knocked down
Right.
and early in a round or anything like that. It just didn't happen. Right.
Well, he got beat by Buster Douglas.
Yeah.
Says he was partying the whole
Yeah,
fucking
partying the whole
time.
time, yeah. So, I don't see, if it was a fair match of no shit, by the book,
Actually, not like exhibition
not
style.
an exhibition style. I think Mike would just crush him. Yeah. Just because he's got it in him. To
Yeah.
do it,
He's never been. Well, he lost to
Buster.
the Tommy Fury, right? He lost that fight to him.
Yeah.
And he's not even a real That guy's not a good boxer, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Like,
So I just look at it and I get, at the end of the day, if there's people you pass on the street, if you know who they are, I'd still probably avoid like that contact with them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, no, Mike Tyson's probably, there's a reason, baddest man on the planet, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, in a boxing match, he'd knock my dick in the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I wouldn't box him.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, then he tried to say, like, when he fought Nick Diaz, and I'm like, yeah, but you were fighting Nick in your world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You weren't fighting Nick in his world, right? You'd have got the Compton
Nate,
slap.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And not done well at all. So it's
that was
apples
Nate,
and
and there's a Nate they fought.
Oh, Nate. Yeah. That's right.
And you didn't do a rematch. You didn't
And
fight him in his
Nate's
style.
not a striker. He's never. None of those guys. They're not like he said. He does that little slap, and they're not known for their striking. It's
Right.
not as
Yeah.
well. Before we wrap this up, you have some items you brought with you.
Yeah, so,
to talk about those.
Yep,
real quick.
so had a buddy of mine, a friend of mine, Mark Ballas made this for me to bring into you guys. So it's the your guys' logo. It's got the SF crest on it here and the Ranger Regiment crest. I'm out of first group. Mark was coming out of seventh group, and he was a former first Ranger back guy. So I asked him to put something together to bring to you guys for the show. And I got each of you gentlemen. It's a coin, an SF coin, first group coin. It's got the
Oh shit! Wow.
little logo on it.
That's
And
awesome,
and I got
man.
one for you too, Dave.
Nice stuff.
Right.
It's
Looks
got a
fantastic. Yeah.
Got a scrotum scratcher on it right there.
Right.
Jeez. How do you put that in your pocket without stabbing yourself to death? Huh?
And then I gave Tony a couple things here too, so he could put up and put on his wall and stuff like that too.
Fuck Tony. Fuck Tony.
Some of you.
About me and Dan.
Fuck you, Don.
You see Tony on the fucking thing, man. It's me and Dan.
Thank you, Carl. And Don's a fucking asshole.
Appreciate it. I got to give him a shout out. The guy, the guy brought me a drink and so other stuff.
Yeah, I got that a little late, a little slow on the draw, but yeah.
He's never good enough for Don.
Yeah, but I want to bring something for you guys.
No, thank you, man. That's awesome.
That's cool. Thank you very much.
We'll make sure we get that to Dan. Promise.
Yeah. Dan will get it.
If you don't,
Well, if he hears the word coin, he'll drive down.
Yeah.
if you don't get it, Dan, let me know and I'll make sure you get it. All right. And there's a couple other things I was going to bring, but they weren't ready yet. So I'll make sure I get them mailed out to you guys.
Awesome, man.
But yeah, so I appreciate the time and having me on here. And Dan, it's huge, honor for me because again, I looked up to you guys so much as far as fighting and watching. I actually learned a lot, from that, that carried over, I think, in the special operations and
Cool. Thank you.
that kind of drive and motivation.
Thank you.
Carl, is there anything that people can view that you would recommend? I mean, for if they're looking to go into militaries or something, anything that because I mean, I know normally we'd say what are your social media stuff like that, but that doesn't really fit for your bill right now. But what would you tell young people to look into or to follow up with or speak to?
I think honestly, like if they're looking military, right, it's sort of like, athletics, right? Put the work in, go out, get the runs in, get your times, good on your runs. Work out back, shoulders, because for us, a lot of the stuff is very much back and shoulder strength, when you're carrying things. And doing the selection process and that, and then working on your hands, but like now, like, you shake your hand, or I'm sure yours, Dan, there's a difference between your hand, my hand, and
Right.
an 18-year-old kid on the street's hand.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, what kind of like lavender soap?
Yeah.
And but a lot of that stuff is because you have to carry and lift and move things, and then maneuver through terrain. If you got some soft hands, you're not going to make it. It's going to be a problem. Same with your feet,
Right.
So if they don't take care of that and prep for it, the guys that I encourage to come out and train now, I hit them up on their scores. And a big thing to do, for soft community, but just anything is like the person you're competing against is yourself, right? That's it. You're not competing a guy on your left or your right, right? Because nowadays, because it's so scientific, that, I can look at your numbers and say, you did this today, you should do this tomorrow, right? Based off your age, how you did on the run, how you did on that lift or whatever it was. I can look at it mathematically through historical data and say, this is where you should be, right? So with that said, it's like, focus on you, because talking about quitting earlier, it's too easy to be doing a run or lifting and the guy next to you, like I was telling you about my buddy Tony, come in and bench over 400 pounds like it's nothing, and then go, all right, I'm out, right? Because you're looking at how they did, not how you're doing, right? When I worked as an instructor at App State, one of the examples was I had a young guy came in. He was off the chart, 300, back then it was a max PT score, 300. The guy was a stud. He's a great guy, right? He came in, and at the end of the semester, we'd give an award for the best physical fitness or physical, improvement, trainer, or student cadet. And when I presented one, I called him up. We're doing a big award ceremony kind of thing and a dinner. And I called this female up and she got the award. And afterwards he pulled me aside and he was like, I don't understand. Like I do this all the time. I said, you do.
Yeah.
I said, every time I grade you, you're a 300, 300, 300, right? You're consistent, right? You max it because that's a max. But then you quit. I said, she went from like a 160 to a 300. So she improved
140 points, right?
140 points compared to you. So why shouldn't she get it? She actually put effort in and improved every day. You stayed the same.
Yeah.
You just treaded water.
Posted, yeah.
Yeah. I said, what you should have been doing is because you can get graded on what they call the extended scale. So his score should have been 310, 320, 330, right? No, he'd do the 300 and get up. I'm like, she put the effort in every single day. And then the other part too is, like I said, as far as not quitting, that same female during a drill we ran had to pull a body, her partner, carry him and drag him, right? So I just draw out of a hat. So it didn't matter if you're female or male, you got paired up, and she got paired up with this big guy. It was rainy and cold, and started dragging, and she stopped. She get all pissy, like, I can't move him. I'm not doing it, right? And I'm like, you're gonna fucking do it.
Yeah.
So I'm down there yelling at her, laying in the mud, yelling at her like you're gonna pull him. And I said, well, okay, if you can't do it, right? If you can't, and I was yelling, if you can't fucking do it, I need you to do something. Lay down here in the mud, get right next to him. Now whisper in his ear, you have a note or a letter that you want me to give to your family because you're going to die today because I'm fucking weak.
Right.
And she was like, oh my God. And then someone in the background said, "Oh shit, it just got real." And she's like, "I'm not going to let him die." And she started dragging and dragging, and she basically butt scooted, dragging this guy the whole way. It was about 100 yards, and the whole way because it hit her like, oh
Yeah.
shit, And so, the thing is, don't quit. Put the effort in. Don't compare yourself to others. Do your best, and should be fine.
Yes.
Right.
Sometimes people just don't understand what they need for that motivation, to get them to go that extra little bit. Yeah. That's digging deep into your own soul.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So put that reality slap on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm sure like with you guys, certain fights, and if someone had a mic in your ear and could have whispered that one little thing to you, you'd be like, oh, now I got to crush this dude.
Yeah. 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 I could have used that during the end of my career.
Don tries to whisper in my ear that, "Dad, they're trying to get into your fanny pack." I'm like, "What? What?" Yeah.
Here comes the beast. Yes.
You did bet you. Yeah. I appreciate you guys taking the time and having me come in today and talk with you all. I really do.
Karl,
we got to get him on with Jeff and Nick.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think
those are the two guys, the special forces from Vietnam.
Yeah,
they have the toxic masculinity whiskey.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I was talking with Jeff recently, and he said they're actually in the works of maybe working with Netflix or something to do a series about their book, the Vagabonds book they wrote.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I tried finding that last night. I couldn't find. I wanted to read it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Book.
It's
funny
great.
book.
Yeah, those guys have done so much, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's a book of funny stories.
Yeah. Like I
characters,
said,
man.
We said last night, I told my wife, like, because her and my daughter all the time are like, oh, you should, sit down and write some stuff. Because I had a pretty unique experience, like I said, with the SAS and stuff like that. But I told you last night, I'd rather write some of the stuff on the funny aspects, right? Because there's shit you do and you're in really difficult, hard times, and the guy will say something, and you're just like, what? Like, what did you just say? And it's just funny as shit because you can't repeat it. It's just
people always want to laugh.
Yeah. Or to just like you said earlier, something to break that ice and kind of give you a moment, give you a little mental break, and then get back to it. Just it's one of those.
That's some of the best stuff there. You really should start writing some of that stuff down while it's still fresh in your mind. Those are precious memories. Precious memories.
That's what she said. My buddy all the time, like he would say, I told you last night, my medic, was like, hey, I was like, we had a big fight, and I was like, hey, what do you think? I woke him up. He lit his cigarette. Middle of the night. I was like, look at my hand. I'm pretty sure I broke it in this fight. He looked at his, he lit a cigarette, and he looked at me, and I had blood on me, but it wasn't mine. And he goes, you're fine. Stop being a pussy. Don't wash that shit in hot water. It'll stain. And he went back to bed. So sometimes you just got to man up, right?
Yeah.
I was like,
yep.
I guess I'm okay. I guess the brakes fly.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
But it was all good. But yeah, I think I'm going to do that, Dan. I want to jot down some of the funnier stuff, because the market's kind of flooded with like all the stories, right? And everyone's got their own, and they're all amazing, unique things that everyone's done. But there is definitely a lighter side in the military and some things that we do that you can't help but just laugh at, and it gets guys through to where they're at. That's why they get to come home, So
I think that's what I was thinking is that if you wrote something like this, and that other people that are toying with the idea of going into military stuff like that, they could see the lighter side and see that, okay, yeah, this has happened to other people as well, and obviously they're still alive today, and somehow life continues to move on. Dust yourself off, get back on up, and is that all that life's got to throw at you? Keep on going.
Yep, exactly. But I appreciate it though, guys. I really do enjoyed the time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Looking forward to seeing y'all again.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Right. I'll bid you guys adieu.
Thank you for watching another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity. You better like, subscribe, and share, or I'm going to come to your house.